Like they're not, I was terrified of them when I saw them when I was a kid because they're so huge and they're so intense and they don't look human. They're not like little angels with wings that are like,
What do they
let
look
me
like?
let me find a parking space for you. They're not, they're these massive high energy beings. When they would come, I would hide under my bed.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Your Superior Self. Tonight, I have Lisa Campion on the show. She is a repeat guest, one of the few that I have on here because, well, she is awesome and amazing, and she has a new book that she's working on. Can't wait to get a hold of that bad boy. But she is in this creative mode, and I wanted to get her on the show because I need some of that energy right now. Lisa, thank you for taking the time.
Hey Trey, so nice to be here with you again. Wow, love it.
hmm So let's talk about the new book that you're working on currently, right? Like, without giving away too much detail, what is that about?
So it's called Awakening Your Psychic Ability, and it'll be out in May 2023. And I really wanted to create a guide that would help be sort of accessible for people that are wanting to open their psychic ability. And I usually have two types of people that come to me for psychic development. One type has gone through a sudden psychic opening and their psychic is off the chart and they're flooded with psychic information. They're overwhelmed. They don't know what to do with it. It's freaking them out and maybe destabilizing them. And the other group of people are people who want to increase their psychic ability, want to turn it on more. So there's the group that wants to turn it off, and there's the group that wants to turn it on. And the method that I've developed for helping people open their psychic ability actually works with both.
Hmm. So explain
Yeah.
to the folks out there, I love your distinction, the difference between intuition and psychic abilities.
Yeah, such a good one. So intuition is something that all humans have. And it's really kind of like part of our instinct in a way. And I think that it's helped us survive, as humans. It's a difficult world out there. And we need, it's like our own inner wisdom. And usually we feel it through three channels. We feel it through our body. So your body is one of your best psychic senses. Most people overlook it, ignore it, don't pay attention. We learn kind of when we're kids to disconnect and shut off from our bodies, wisdom. And then the next one is our emotions. So you might have that when you say, like, I had a good feeling about that, or I had a bad
hmm
feeling, or we kind of our emotions guide us. And then the next one is uh, are the knowing. I don't know why I know, I just know.
hmm
And that's like your gut. And those things come together to create our intuition. It's constantly giving you information, but it's coming from your own self, your higher self, your body's wisdom, and it's really, really powerful. We have to learn how to listen to it, which is a different topic, really. But psychic is when we get information from outside of ourselves. And that's like, well, what is that? That's like your angels, your dead grandma, the people and spirits that surround all of us that we call our spirit guides, who are constantly giving us information and guidance along our path. They want to help us have an easier time here on the planet. And that's psychic's a little harder. Everyone's intuitive. Most people are psychic, and all of it is something that we have to work at. And I think people have this idea that you're just automatically psychic and you never have to work for it. I don't think that's the case. We have to, just like if you had like really intense musical ability or athletic ability, it's like a muscle, right? You still have to work it. You still have to practice and know stuff and practice in order to maximize both of those gifts.
Mm. So there is a distinction, and we all have intuition. However, psychic ability, do we all still have that, or is it just
I
we?
think most people do. That was a little scarier for people,
Mm,
because I don't know, like what if you're not, depends on your beliefs. What if you believe in that stuff? If you're real pragmatic, agnostic, you don't believe in angels, you think you're just, when you're dead, you're just gone, there's nothing out there. For people who really have sort of a practical take on life, that psychic thing is a little bit harder to access. You have to kind of believe in it. And honestly, I'm rather skeptical myself. I'm not sure I would believe in the things that I talk about, except they happen to me. Like I have an open mind about things, but it's
Hmm.
when I live that experience that I really believe.
So I think we talked about this on our previous episode, but you've been kind of in the psychic game since very young, right? Like you were
Mm,
seeing dead people at a very early age, which
yeah.
to that, I mean, yeah, I mean, people say I want to be psychic, but then when you see that first person that's not there, like, you know, how do you handle that?
It's not very fun, and especially for people like me that are visual psychics. So when I was little, I would sometimes have trouble telling the difference between physical people and spirits. That's not cool. Um, and I saw amazing things, but I also saw difficult things. And it's a pretty challenging gift. I mean, I was born in the 60s, so I was growing up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And back then, this was not cool to talk about. They put you in a mental hospital if you see dead people and talk to angels. Do you know what I mean? So I was just
Yeah.
trying to stay, I was just trying to keep my head down and pretend to be normal in public, so that didn't happen to me. And at the same time, I was trying to figure out what was going on, and there weren't a lot of resources. No books, no podcasts, no psychics on TV, no internet, by the way, none of that. So I was on my own trying to deal with it, and I feel really strongly and passionately about helping other people who are going through psychic openings not have to struggle the way that I did.
Wow. There's another thing I wanted to talk to you about was, and we'll go back to the psychic stuff and intuition. I promise everyone listening. But I did stumble upon like one of your, I don't know if it was courses or I think it was Instagram post where you were hanging out with Bob Lancer.
Yeah.
Um, and I think he was talking about the method.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's good stuff.
what how did you guys attract? Like how did you start working with him? Like what did that look like?
So he was on my podcast. He came on my podcast like 3 years ago, almost 4 years now. And he said, "Hey, I do this thing called the method. I want to give you a session before we talk, just so we have something to talk about." And it was kind of miraculous what he did. And we did the podcast, and then afterwards, I was like, "Huh, that person has something. That's something that I want to experience more of." So I started working with him, and I worked with him twice a week. Now I'm down to every other week, but it's based on the Kabbalah, so it's like a meditation and kind of um, uh, way that you can work through trauma and really unsettled feelings that help you fully process them and come out the other side. And since it's one of the most effective techniques I've ever had for clearing out bad when we feel bad or when we're thinking negatively. And I feel like a different person. Like I'm happy most of the time. I don't go down the negative rabbit holes, and if I do, I know what to do about it. And my life changed. So when I started like all that stuff about law of attraction and thinking good things isn't hard. Quit thinking about bad things. That's what's hard. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
But
Like
what
stop thinking about what you don't want to create. That's a trick.
yeah, but it's I mean, I've heard it all from law of attraction, right?
Mm.
How much of it is actually feeling it, right? Like, is it feeling that it's already happened to you, or is it kind of just like accepting it if it comes or not, not really having it, not being really attached to it? Like Bob talks about just feeling this, not really like narrowing down like this focus so much to like a special thing happening, but more so being open to abundance, right? Like what allowing the universe to work in its way, however that looks, instead of having this idea of how it must come to you, and
Yeah.
then giving that to the universe and trusting that God will take care of it.
Like I can tell you when you go into a state of joy and you live there most of the time, things just work out for you. Things work out. You're in that higher vibration. Things you don't expect come your way, and you get very clear on the guidance that where the higher sources come in and really help you live your life purpose. But for me, it took a lot. And by the time I met Bob, I'd already been working on myself forever. I've already done like tons of therapy and body work and blood healing and like everything. I've already done all that stuff, and still was getting stuck in these negative states. And in fact, I think when I didn't really know that I was sort of low-key miserable all the time until I stopped being low-key miserable all the time.
So how long have you been, 3 years now, you've been working with Bob?
Yeah.
And so people listening to this, right? Like someone like you, with your talent, your psychic abilities, your intuition, having the ability to speak to your guides, right? Like they would say, well, isn't doesn't she feel good all the time? Like, isn't she receiving information that helps her out? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, that's just to my point is even though you have these gifts and you have the ability to actually receive messages and be maybe more sensitive to messages from the universe, you're in this human nature too,
We're still
right?
all humans. We're
Yeah.
still just humans, and we all have trauma. We all have shit that we went through in that was difficult as children. We have past life trauma. We've been through a lot to bring us to this point. And that holds us down, weighs us down, burdens us, creates depression, anxiety, and all kinds of problems. And I mean, me too. I mean, I think unless you're like actually an enlightened being, an enlightened master, which I'm certainly not, but I don't know anybody who is. I know a lot of people who say they are. I'm not sure I've ever met anybody who is really, except maybe Bob. He might be. But he would never say it, sort of that thing. Unless we're there, we're still working. We still have work to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's just part of being human.
Well, you talk about a story where what was it? You were younger and um what was it? You met some a guy from India. I can't remember his name right now. You were younger.
Well,
You
yeah, my parents were hippies, and when I was 10, they took me to meet Maharishi Yogi. He was the founder of Transcendental Meditation. And of course, I was 10. I had no idea who he was, and he was teaching people TM, which is like when you meditate but you use a mantra. And the famous TM mantra is Om, right? And he brought me back. He took every person who came that day into kind of this back room, and he would do this initiation on you. They call it Diksha. And he was speaking through a translator. And he was like, blah, 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 blah. Like you could tell he was doing it a lot. And then he looked at me. He was like, oh, he was like, oh, I'm so sorry, honey. He was talking through his translator. I'm so sorry, honey. Like, you're gonna have a really rough childhood. I apologize, but you have to stick it through because you're gonna help a lot of people. Like he was like, if you grew up in my country, we would know what to do with you, but you live in America and you're just out of luck. But you got to hang in there because it's gonna be okay.
what would they
And
do differently in India?
I think it's such a spiritual place. I think maybe somebody would have recognized my gifts, like I would have had some spiritual training. But he he said something like because America's is spiritually bankrupt country, you're out of luck.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 10. I was like, oh, but I was just kind of glad. It was sort of the first time anybody noticed or said anything about the experiences that I was having. It seemed like he knew what he was talking about. And I really held on to that, things are going to be okay. And then later when I grew up, I was like, wait a second, that was Maharishi Yogi. Like that, you know, it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that was kind of a big deal.
It's a huge deal, right? Just
Yeah,
from what I read.
yeah.
Um, so going back to intuition and psychic abilities, when you work with your clients, you help them find their sweet spot, right? Like you have a map, and I guess some people operate at different levels, or I don't at different. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like.
Mhm.
Walk me through that process. Like when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, look, I want to increase my psychic abilities. I want to be more intuitive." Like, what do you do for them?
Mm. There's a lot that I do. So a lot of it is about teaching. So we need to know stuff. We need to have a certain knowledge set. Like if we go back to our athletic ability analogy, you have to know stuff. If you want to be an athlete, you got to study. You got to know your thing. So part of the knowledge thing that I do is this map. The other thing that we need is practice. So we need some time to practice what we're doing. And one of my psychic abilities is to be able to tell what people's psychic gifts are. So a lot of times I can look at people and just be like, all right, these are the gift sets that you have, and help them understand what that is, a lot of the teaching that I do is sort of helping people unlearn what isn't true about psychic, because we just have a lot of mythos around that comes from our media stuff. So we have to kind of get on the reality page of what it's really going to be like, um, and then help them sort of navigate either the turning off or the turning on aspect. Like how do you set
Mhm.
boundaries? How do you turn it off when you want it off and turn it on when you want it on? Because it's not fun to have that thing go off when you're in the middle of the supermarket, or when you're in the middle of a party and you're trying to have fun and your psychic goes on full. And these basic, like, how do you trust yourself? How do you trust that what you're getting is a real psychic hit and not just the crazy stuff we make up in our own head? How do we um, interpret the data we're getting? Because psychic information comes often in the form of symbols. And one of the hardest skills to learn is how to interpret those symbols. And it's like, well, I saw a bowl full of tangerines. So what? What does that mean? And we have to learn how to interpret things. And those things seem to be where when people figure out how to do that, that's really, really important.
Do you get your messages like when you get your messages, do you automatically know what they mean?
Most of the time, I do because I've been doing it for so long, but sometimes I have to noodle on it or ask. It's kind of a co-creative process. So I might say, look, I'm getting this. What does that mean to you? You know, because what it means to me and what it means to you might be really different. So sometimes it's like an investigative process that we have to go through together to get down to the root of it.
When I'm when if I want to create a more two-way conversation with my higher self, is that intuition or psychic abilities?
I think if you're dealing with your higher self, it's more intuition. Because you're really, intuition is like our self talking to ourself. And I do think it's one of the best forms of guidance we can get. Like, who knows better for you than yourself, than your
Hmm.
higher self? Like, your higher self is dialed into every aspect of you. And I really think it's such a powerful thing to learn how to do.
Sure. How do you teach people like me who are wanting to strengthen that relationship? Like, what are some of the things, methods that we can implement immediately to start seeing a stronger communication line?
Mhm. The first thing to do is really dedicate some time to it. So one of the big problems that we have is that we have to be quiet to hear messages. We need to learn how to shift our brain state into the alpha brain state, which is where our psychic messages come through. When we're running around and thinking and working, we're in the beta brainwave, and we don't get any psychic information on that. So we have to take time and we have to learn. So professional psychics learn how to downshift their brainwaves on purpose. And
Mm.
that's how, so you have to go into the alpha state and you can drop all that TM I started doing, the transcendental meditation I started doing when I was 10. It really came in handy because that's kind of how I learned how to do it. And my parents did something called the Silva method when I was in high school that also helped me learn
I
how to
just
do
heard
that.
about that.
Yeah, it's very cool. I went through all 7 levels of it when I was in high school, which is pretty radical. God bless my hippie parents, honestly. Um, they gave me a lot of really great opportunities to train it. So, you know, I would say take some time to sit down and be quiet. Ask yourself a question and then go into a quiet reflective state. What brings you into alpha. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe so many psychics get great hits in the shower because when you're in the shower, you're in that. When you're driving, especially somewhere you've been many times, mowing the lawn, washing the dishes, you can you know, write that question under your pillow and give yourself a suggestion that you're going to dream about it, right? The other thing I think is really useful is starting something that I call the psychic journal and writing down all the hits that you get. Every time you pull a card, you have a dream, you get an intuition, you get that sense of knowing, you write it down. And I guarantee if you do that, you're going to be amazed how psychic you already are.
Mm.
The issue is those things are very ephemeral. And if you could have this massive hit, and if you don't write it down, you forget it an hour later, it's gone.
It's like a dream.
It's like a dream. And
Hmm.
if you don't write it and capture it, you forget. Then when it happens a few days later, you might not put two and two together. But if you consistently write these things down, then that's a really great way to kind of strengthen and build the muscles. My sense about you is that you have a strong auditory connection with your guides. So, and with your higher self. So that you would experience that as like sometimes when you're talking to yourself, it's your guides or your higher self. And it's going to be like a voice. And for you, I think it comes in this left ear, in your left ear.
Left ear.
Yeah, so as you pay attention to that, you may notice like a real quiet but directive voice. It's like, dude, you should do this, do that. It's telling you what to do. Sometimes if you have the auditory writing is even stronger, and you can do something called automatic writing, which is when you write the question, you go down it, you go into that quiet space, and then you just start writing the answer. You just start writing and see what emerges. That would be good. You also have a really strong sense of knowing, so that those two are extremely strong in you. That happens for people that are a little more analytical, a little more um, skeptical, highly intelligent. People, have that kind of gut hearing. Often those two go together, and it's a good combination to have because they're both extremely reliable and useful.
Auditory. I was going to say that. Um, but I still like, so I'm still trying to put together the signs, right? Like the numbers and everything like that, the signs that I get,
Yeah,
and what that means. And then, like I hear, like I think it's I hear a voice. It's not like I feel like it's my voice. I don't know, right? Like it's not like I hear a voice. It's like my thoughts, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
And then like sometimes it will come in different forms of communication as far as like, grammar and sentence structure.
yeah,
Um, but then again, it's like, oh man, did I just make that up? Because I don't know. You're
I know.
still like you said.
So hard not to trust it. It's so hard. One of the things I think is cool that I teach my students is to use a pendulum, or you can muscle test. And with the pendulum, you just want to get a yes no answer out of it. So you show me yes. For me, it's round and round. Show me no. It's back and forth. Show me I don't know. It doesn't move. Right. And if you get a hit, you can say, like, something walked through your room in the middle of the night, and you think, oh my God, I think that's that Uncle Fred. And but then you go down the rabbit hole of doubt pretty much. Usually 90% of the time, the first impression you get is right, even if it's weird. Um, so it's Uncle Fred. And then you go, can't be. Well, I'm just making that up. But if you get the pendulum, you're like, was that Uncle Fred? It's going to give you a real solid yes, no, I don't know, right then and there. And it's a really good way, or if you can muscle test too if you don't like the pendulum. It's a really great way to get confirmation in the moment that can help strengthen your ability to trust yourself. And then over time, what happens is you get the hit and you're like, every time I get the hit and it's right, I get this sensation in my body. Like I feel shivers or I feel this fly walking in my hair. I feel this weird pressure in the back of my head, like someone's
Mm-hmm.
pushing on me. And every time I get that feeling, I know I'm not making it up. So the the pendulum can help you pair the physical sensations you're having that will also give you confirmation, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, I love the idea that the technique of asking for signs. Super important, especially when you're working with guides. So if a new guide comes in, you think it's an angel, you think it's Uncle Fred, we want to ask our guides to sort of prove who they are. We need to know, you just like you wouldn't listen to any random person on the street, without kind of vetting them a little bit. It's not a great idea to just like any old spirit that talks to you that you're going to follow their every whim. Like we need to kind of like make them prove that they're on the up and up, and that's where signs can come in really handy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like you can ask for signs. Usually, if you ask for a time frame, I always say 24 hours. You can ask for particular signs. And some people really like angel numbers or pennies or feathers or all those kind of typical things. I sometimes just pay attention to what's happening in my surroundings, and it can come in a lot of different forms. Sometimes for me, it comes from music.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll, just see what's on the radio when I get in the car, what's playing when you walk in a store, that kind of thing. Um, and one of my strongest signs is what other people say to me. So if three people say the same thing in a short amount of time, I really pay attention because I know that's meaningful.
Hmm. Um, well, is there a hierarchy, like from higher self, spirit guides, angels, anything like that? I feel
Yeah,
like, is there
there
really?
is. Yeah, that's what the map is all about. So every psychic has a sweet spot on like the set of skills that they're really good at. But I feel like I always wanted to be, I never, especially because I've been seeing clients and doing Reiki, I never know what's going to come in. You know, if you're just a medium, what are you going to do if an angel shows up? Or if you only talk to angels, what are you going to do when you're in the haunted Airbnb, which happens to me every time I go somewhere, by the way?
Really?
Yeah, it's Murphy's Law. Put the psychic in the haunted hotel room. It's just gonna happen,
Well, is it haunted?
you
It
know.
automatically feels scary, right? But is it just haunted because there's spirit energy there, or is it haunted because it's actually scary?
It Hotels are tricky because there's a lot of stuff that happens in hotel rooms. So good and bad. It's just a high energy place and a lot of residual human energy. So I can I'm like, what happened? What happened here in the last? I'm like, did they wash the sheets and did they clear the did they smudge that place? You know what I mean? So that there's that, but also just spirits tend to linger in those kind of places. I don't know why it's hotels and restaurants, but boy, dang, it is. So, um, I keep my ghost clearing kit with me when I travel. It's sort of my community. Like I want a good night's sleep, but it's community service to like whoever's going to show up at that hotel after I'm
So what is the
gone.
hierarchy? Is it
You
high
know.
self,
Well,
spirit guides, angels?
kind of the way that I teach it, there's three realms, the lower realm, the middle realm, and the upper realm. And the lower realm is sort of on a lower vibration. It's not bad or evil or hell or anything, but that's where we get like shamanic guides, power animals. The lower realm has a lot to do with our subconscious self. So dreams, our soul self. So sometimes the higher self comes in to and contacts us through these lower realm experiences. That's where you have like a near death experience, or you have a something in your life that's um, like a critical event for you that really changes you. Then
Mhm.
there's the middle realm, that's planet Earth, and there's kind of like dead people on one side and nature spirits on the other side. And then from up there, I think it's like soul world, which is what I always called heaven, where we're hanging out when we're not here on the planet. And above there, there's kind of an unlimited ascended masters. There's the Akashic realm, which is where all of the information about our past lives is stored. Angels are very high. They're like one of the much higher dimensions that we're in. So that's why they're kind of hard to connect with, because you have to learn how to upshift your frequency high enough to get to them. And then above that, there's like the deities, God, basically, and all of the manifestations of divine energy. And as far as I can tell, it's infinite because it's
Mhm.
an infinite universe.
Do you believe that we are our consciousness, or that our higher self is a part of that God deity?
I do. It's my personal belief that we are like little sparks of that intelligence that are out there, like God created an infinite universe, so it would have a place to exist inside of. And we there's something at every single point on the continuum of every possibility of infinity, and we're part of that. And I
Hmm.
think we learn, we grow, we experience this weird little planet that we live on, and all the things that we do, and eventually we cycle back to God, and God takes all of that experience that we've had, like we're like a cell in the body of that being. God takes all of that experience and grows and evolves. That's what I think. But
Essentially, everything is God at just
yeah.
different levels of vibration, or levels of
Hmm.
evolvement, or whatever you want to
Density,
name it. Yeah.
vibration, because something has to exist on every point in the continuum,
Sure. I guess
right?
I just get hung up on the archangel stuff, like because I've heard so many different philosophies on them, even the ascended masters. I think Jesus, in my opinion, my personal opinion, right? Um, Not a belief in it. It's actual, like, I don't, who am I to say, right? Like in this incarnation as Trey, I have a bunch of literature that says so many different things. However, I have conversations with great people like you, and there's a resonance or a feeling of Jesus came here to show us what we are capable of, right?
Yeah.
Of having this Christ consciousness. And I think a lot of the ascended masters, whoever they are, wanted to teach us that. And I just don't know where the archangels fall on that, right? Like, is it?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Most of my guides are ascended masters, and I like them. One of my spiritual teachers said long ago that the masters and prophets and saints are good to follow because we're walking in their steps, in their footsteps. They were human, and they know how to become enlightened, and they leave clues, breadcrumbs, trails, literature, books, processes, all these things for us to follow. Angels are more mysterious. Angels are not human. It's not like you die and become an angel. They're their own kind of being. And there's only a very small subset of angels that have anything to do with humanity. And
Mhm.
when you talk to angels, I sometimes feel like they have a difficult time relating to us humans. So if you say, when's something going to happen? They're like, soon. But to an eternal being that's never been human, soon could be like 10 lifetimes from now. Do you know what I mean?
How many conversations with angels? I mean, I'm assuming, have you had conversations with all of the archangels?
I don't think so. I think there are infinite amount of
Infinite,
them.
infinite
And
amount.
there's only a very small amount of them that deal with humanity. I think people have um, sort of strange ideas about angels. Like they're not, I was terrified of them when I saw them when I was a kid because they're so huge and they're so intense and they don't look human. They're not like little angels with wings that are like,
What do they look like?
let me find a parking space for you. They're not, they're these massive high energy beings. When they would come, I would hide under my bed and I'd either be like, what did I do? Or what do they want me to do? Because it was one of those, you know, and they, sometimes they look like big wheels, round wheels,
Mhm.
fire coming out of them. Sometimes they look like columns, columns or they're really multi-dimensional beings. So I don't think, and they put on like a human user interface for us and they will appear as humans because their true nature would snap your mind, like we just can't perceive them.
Mm,
They're these massive multi-dimensional beings that have to put on a little user interface so we can fry our brains when we perceive them.
sure.
So I don't feel like they're cute little kitties and puppies that are here to serve us. They're super powerful and intense.
Mm,
That's just I know so many people who love angels, and I'm not saying I don't love them. I just find them quite intense, you know. When they show up, I'm always like, oh boy, okay, what are we doing now? Like what's gonna happen? It's gonna be big,
have you seen
you know.
Archangel Michael?
I think he's one of the ones that come around most often to humans, because we can invoke them if we call them. If we ask them to come around, they'll come. And there are a lot of people who call on Archangel Michael, especially now, for protection. And I think that he's quite fierce, he's looks like a big red column of energy to me,
Mm.
you know. And he's I mean, they definitely help. And the ones that I work with the most are Gabriel, Ariel, Raphael, and Michael.
When they drop
Um,
in, what do they say, like, to announce their presence? How do you know it's them?
I feel like an incredible pressure, and like when your ears pop when you go up high in high altitude, it's all like a pressure change.
Mm.
That's how I feel them coming. And I have had a few dealings with Archangel Metatron. Wow, and that's like a freight train coming for me. It's like a freight train coming through your room. There's like no way to miss it.
Well,
Like
what are they
it's
saying to you
big.
when they come, like, with your clients? Are they just kind of like, are they watching over your client? Are they just coming in to give them a message from somewhere else? Like, what is that?
Some of my clients are what I call angel people, and they're just really, really, really connected to the angels. And that a lot, and those people are usually the nicest people you ever met. The people that like not a mean bone in their body, like so kind. And I believe that their souls agree to partner with angelic beings because the angels can't really manifest on our planet. Like they just, I mean, they can, but they don't often do it.
Hmm.
And so they connect with humans, some of us humans, to act as their ambassadors. And those earth angels, if you want to call them that, they're humans that work in collaboration with angels, will often be put on assignment by their angels. And those people have a light about them. They have, uh, they're usually quite extraordinary people, even though they're often quite humble. They don't take spotlight. They're quiet. They're like the kindergarten teachers and people who are just nurses or on the floor in the middle of the night when nobody else is there. It's like those kind of people. Those are the real angelic people that just have a natural affinity to them. And I meet them quite often. They come in for sessions. And sometimes I think the rest of the people of angels just they've called on the angels. They've been like, okay, please, we can do that with anybody. You can call on Jesus. That consciousness will show up if you invoke it. And I think a lot of people have like this idea of guardian angels, like they're here to protect us. And so I see that type of angel around many, many, many people.
Hmm.
But the thing about our guides is that they can't take away your free will. They can't, you know, learn your lessons for you, like take away the consequences of your actions. That's not what they're for. They can smooth the path. They can maybe right before you're about to make that horrible decision, they tap you on the shoulder and they're like, dude, do you really want to do that? Are you sure about that one? Maybe you want to rethink that. But they can't stop you. That's how we learn. We learn by making mistakes, by doing it's all research. I don't even know if it's mistakes. It's like we do stuff and then we experience the results and the consequences of what we do. They don't interfere with that. And they don't interfere in the free will of other people. That's black magic, by the way.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
please don't ever, anyone do that. Certainly the angels aren't going to. So sometimes they remind me of that, like, that old like game show where you could call somebody if you didn't know the answer,
Who
you'd
wants
be
to be
like,
a
oh
millionaire? Is that what it is?
yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. Exact. And you'd be
Phone a
they're like,
friend.
yeah, they're the friend you phone when you need help. They're like, okay, well, we're gonna try this, do this. They can guide us, but they're not gonna do it for us. And I think a lot of people wish that their guides hope that their guides are going to step in and do that's not how it works.
What has been their repeated message for you in this incarnation?
For me, so when I was about 13, I was meditating and had this experience of all these high level beings showed up. And they were like, some of them ascended masters, some of them angels. And they kind of like, they were like, hey, I was praying. I don't know. I was just such an odd child, but I learned the prayer of Saint Francis, which is something like, Lord, make me an instrument like of thy peace. Like, and I was praying, like, I want to serve, I want to help. What do I
Hmm.
do? I was asking for help. And they were like, all these beings showed up and they're like, we can help you. It's going to be intense. You need to agree. And if you agree, you're going to get a lot of psychic power, spiritual power, and as long as you're in service to humanity, you're going to have extra luck, extra help. But there's going to be some like giving up your will to be of service to other people.
Mm.
Do you want to do that? And they asked me 3 times if I wanted to do that. And they're like, anytime you want to opt out, you can.
Wow.
And I was like 13. I was like, okay, what do you know? I don't know. Just I felt it from my soul that that's what I needed to do. And ever since then, I literally feel like there's 13 people and there's 13 of them. In my head, tell like a committee up there all the time, telling me stuff, showing me stuff. And as long as I keep on mission, they're there and they plow the road for me.
So like you trust them fully, where if even if you're not really sure where to go next, you kind of just
I argue, I throw fits, I get feisty and want to have it my way, you know. Of course I do sometimes, but that doesn't usually go well for me. Things go better for me when I surrender, and
Go with the flow.
it's been a really like long struggle that I've had, my will versus God's will.
Hmm.
And how does that work? And lately as I've gotten older, I'm more like, okay, I'm gonna not totally surrender my will because that's not smart. We need to be masters of our own self. But I saw my will has softened and I feel more like some higher level forces are working through me. Um and then things get kind of magical when that happens.
Well, you spoke about the knowing, right? That you had this sense of me having this knowing. What is that knowing really, right? Like, and do a lot of people have that, or is that what we're working towards?
I think a lot of people have it. I think not many people listen to it,
Mm.
you know. And the way that you have it, it's really in the third chakra, so in your solar plexus. For you, it's a lot about kind of like a big bullshit detector, that you're really like feeling the energy of the people that you're meeting and the situation that you're meeting. I think you're really finely attuned to when things don't match, when the energy someone has doesn't match what they say. That's going to trigger an alarm in your sense of knowing and make you uneasy or distrustful around that person. So I think it's a lot about threat assessment. So like figuring out who's trustworthy, who's safe. If you walk into a room, you may automatically scan the room unconsciously and be like, who am I going to have to save and who am I going to have to kill? It might be like, who's the danger and who am I going to be in charge of? And you're just going to figure that out like within 10 seconds of any room you walk into where there's multiple people. And then that third chakra is that intuitive knowing is kind of always reading the room, always out there feeling like what's happening. Is it good? Is it that are things coherent where what you say is what you get or not?
Mm.
And it's a beautiful, you're going to be just a really good judge of character, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I am.
Yeah,
I've
I would
learning
say
how
you
to.
are.
I'm learning how to trust that more, right? Because
Yeah.
it's happened a couple of times where like I'm trying to trust the universe and I don't know what the messages are, and it's like they've got me to this point and to this person, and what am I supposed to do, right? Like I go through with it, and then like I'm still around this person, and I'm like, I really am just not feeling the vibes. Like there's something about it that is just not feeling right in my body. Like I feel it's not like
Yeah.
I'm brave enough to go and follow the universe from the signs and the directions, but then is it just the universe saying, all right, well, I wanted to see if you would follow us, and then we're trying to show you that you can't trust everybody or trust yourself more on those judgment calls, right? Like those feelings, trust your body, like the solar
Mm,
plexus, like what you were talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Because there's times where like I'm like, why did that happen? Like why did I go through this? If like I'm just going to feel like crap or feel unsafe or insecure or intimidated, not intimidated, but like more or less like the bullshit alarms going off.
Yeah. That's a good question. And I don't know, like, on one hand, I could say it's always really good to, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you want to follow all your guidance. I think it's really healthy to bring in common sense, and to bring your like 50% intuition, 50% common sense is a really good combination. I don't know if we want to give away ourselves totally over to the intuitive side of things because we need the analytical common sense side. We need both. We need both of those things working together in harmony. That's when we reach our potential, you know? So I don't know if you've given too much over into the experimental, I'm going to go with the intuition and you're dropping your common sense a little bit. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if that's the case or if there's some reason why you needed to have that experience. Sometimes we learn, especially warrior type people like you, need to learn through friction.
Mm,
And the best way to learn is you get in the boxing ring and you go a few rounds.
sure.
You know what I mean?
Warrior. There we go again. a
Yeah,
warrior.
you get the warrior super strong. Which is true for most people. Like 75% on the people here on this planet, give or take, have that kind of warrior, in my experience, in my observation. And me too, including me as well. So, but you've got a real strong warrior nature. And the warriors sometimes only learn by experiencing things, only learn by, I could say stoves hot. My son who went into the Marine Corps when he was a little kid. Stove's hot, stove's hot, stove's hot. Yes, touch it. He's like, the stove's hot, mom. I'm like, oh. That, and they're, I think you're the type maybe that has to learn that way.
Sure,
That's the best way for you to learn. So that means you're gonna have a lot of experiences.
sure. I mean, it's great because I that's how I learn, right? Like, because I have a hard time being told what, like, if someone says you have to do this, because I'm
Yeah.
like, immediately, I'm like,
Mm-mm.
no, like, I was just not going to happen. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I have to consciously be aligned with it, and it has to like come from me, or you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
so it was in like is more or less like an experiment. Let me see what the universe is bringing me. Like, it
Right.
could be just the fact that I'm listening to it is maybe the lesson, or maybe it's kind of like I like to look at it as the universe is talking to me, I'm trusting it, and then I was in a situation where I had to trust my feeling.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I'm looking at it. Like,
I think
I'm,
that's good.
instead of being like, oh, I'm just totally blind and I'm going to totally trust the universe and not be common, use that sense, common sense. I'm
It's
looking at
like,
it.
what's that saying that's from the Sufism, like trust in Allah but tie your camel too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know?
It's funny. I was thinking about that the entire time I was going through that process. I was like, yeah, you're right. Tie that camel up.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, man, how do you communicate with that higher self though? Right? Like, is there
It's
forms?
communicating through you constantly throughout the day. It's literally sending a pulse of information and energy down this line, this central line of energy. It's called the Hara line if you speak Japanese. Um, at, and that comes in the top of your head. When it comes in the top of your head, it kind of will have this like aha moment, and then from there it comes into your heart, and you'll feel that like kind of like a calling for something, like your heart sort of stirring in this move, like where you feel moved from the heart, you know,
Mhm.
and then it goes down farther to this point lower in your belly called the Hara point, where that's where we feel an impulse to take it into action in life, and if you pay attention, you're going to feel that happening many times throughout the day. And that's your own soul constantly downloading information, giving you course corrections, telling you, helping you out as you're experiencing this particular life that you're in at the moment. And I don't know, I think that's the process that you've been in, is really kind of allowing yourself to receive that and see what happens when you do. It's kind of beautiful that you're doing it, honestly. I think it's cool.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
like, I just feel like I want to, um, man, I just want to be in touch with that. I want to be more true, like, to myself, like my higher self. I want to be in line with that. I want to live
Yeah.
differently, like, I
Yeah.
want to get out of this program, like this
Hmm.
machine. Like, we took a trip and recently out to LA and was like just looking around at how people live, and they emphasize lifestyle, even though you can't afford a house out there. But the lifestyle emphasis is just amazing. I'm out there and I'm like, what are we doing on the East Coast? Like,
I don't know.
I get out there
Do you
running.
live in New England too? Like, where do you
I'm
live?
in Baltimore.
You're in Baltimore.
So it's like,
I'm in Providence. So I understand. I don't know. I don't know why we don't live in Hawaii, like, or the Caribbean. I don't get it either.
well, speaking of Hawaii, like, my desire is to one day live in Hawaii, around the ocean,
Mm.
around that water, the beach, and like really draw from that power, the energy out there. But I don't want it to be a pipe dream either. I feel like if we are a part of God, and this is just me speaking out of, like, just this, my thoughts here, like, we should be able to manifest things, not like out of like, I want that Mercedes, or I want this Corvette, or I want this for that. But if I have a deep desire to like connect and want to live a certain way that is aligned with the universe and that has the possibility and like a high probability of helping others, like I should be able to will that or be able to co-create that with the universe in whatever way that looks like, right? Like instead of, you know, just drudging through my everyday 9 to 5 or whatever that looks like for someone and saying, you know, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life and just being a, you know, I don't want to say a victim, but being a victim of circumstances or maybe like past choices. Like we are, you know, I get it. Like I totally 100% own the fact of all my choices. Like I'm a factor of all of those, right?
Yeah.
But what if you change? You know, what if you change and you're not the same person that you were when you made those choices and now you want
And
something
you
different?
got to change. Things have to change. That's hard for humans. We don't like change. My experience of this for myself and what I see in other people is that if you feel totally worthy and it is aligned with your purpose, it happens.
Hmm.
And that worthiness is a big problem for people. That we really have this feeling state of not feeling worthy of that. And so it's really hard for us to change our situations until we, and like I said, sort of like what we were talking about Bob Lancer and the method, like working through the feelings of unworthy, living in a high state of joy. And then I think when we get there, those things sort of do happen. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I also like I lived in this town in Massachusetts forever. It's not it was such a average, boring town. I don't know. And I remember when I moved there, my guides told me you're going to be here for 25 years. And I felt like, you know, they said it's like an assignment. I'm like, well, can I be in southern France for 25 years? And they're like, no, because you're like a light. And because you're like a light, we had to put you in a dark place.
What's funny, you're there,
You
right?
know,
Isn't it like known for its lighthouses?
kind of, yeah.
I guess.
You know, and then when 25 years, like to the day I moved to Rhode Island, which I like much better. And it was sort of that assignment for me of being in I raised my kids there. That my family was there. Like things happened that needed to happen. That my personal self didn't like it, but my soul self knew that it was the right thing. And
Sure.
so I think sometimes we get a conflict. If there's a sole reason why you need to be in Baltimore that has to do with family or bringing a talk about a place that needs a little light, you know, like the East Coast needs that right now. So it could be part of your assignment, or it could be that there's still like a worthiness thing that needs to be worked through where we can feel worthy of being that happy.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I've been trying the method. Like I agree with you. Right. It's transformational, like as far
Yeah,
as like
dude.
how you
You
feel.
should do a couple sessions with Bob. Just call him up and get on the phone with him. It's mind blowing.
You know,
Yeah.
I watched it on. There was like a couple of sessions on YouTube. I'm assuming that is that similar to what his sessions look like. Like,
Yeah, but he just gets personal, you know, in the sessions. So he's going to get in there and be like, what are you working through? What are you working through today? What are you holding on
mm,
to? What's challenging? You know, so it's more zeroed in on your situation at the moment.
sure,
Mm,
Lisa, this has been amazing. I can't wait for your book to come out, and we'll have you back on again.
thank you.
How can people find you?
Best place is my website, lisacampion.com. And then, you know, all the usual social media things there too. But I'd love people to come by. I have a lot of free resources on my website for people that are psychic empaths to, you know, learn a little bit more how to deal with those things. I've always got lots of stuff for you to stop by.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. This has been
All right.
amazing.
Thanks, Trey.